a lot of these things, it just goes to show what an epic task filmmaking can be anyway.
Welcome back, everybody, to Boys on Film, where we cast our critical eyes over the latest movies and TV shows too. And we're inviting you to join us to talk about cursed films too. I'm your host, Phil Marriott, and look, it's... hang on, got to get it right way around. Paul Joseph.
Hi.
So, Shudder is the platform where you can see cursed films too. I haven't seen the first series, but after seeing 3 of these episodes, I really want to delve back and check out the first series. We got The Wizard of Oz, Rosemary's Baby, and you've seen Stalker. I haven't seen Stalker yet, but I've seen Cannibal Holocaust. Now, you've seen, presumably, you've seen The Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
How much of this that's featured in this, all the behind-the-scenes stuff and all the rumours and all the cursed details of the film, have you seen? Did you know that?
I'd heard the story about the little people who played Munchkins in other parts being very debauched in the hotel. And I'd heard about the actress who played the witch getting burnt on set.
Margaret Hamilton.
Other elements I didn't know, but obviously there's a lot of stories of things that kind of went wrong or were problematic about it. And it was really good to then kind of unpick them, really.
Definitely. Now, you sent me a message saying such a great concept for a series, and I'm surprised I didn't know anything about the first series, because I'm presuming that The Exorcist is one of those cursed films.
Just to explain, if people don't know, there's a sequence where there's something in the background that's quite far in the distance, and its motion looks like something swinging. And it was said that it was one of the actors who played one of the Munchkins took their own life on set, and that was it, caught on camera. Part of the reason behind the mythology is that it doesn't appear on every print of the film. Some versions where it's very clearly a bird, which leads people to think, well, something must have been covered up, which adds to the story. However, there's no record or about who this person was. Yeah. And that there's someone who did die. What's really interesting as well is that they then talk about how, this scene is only available on certain copies, but then people have now doctored copies to put it in. So if I think anyone watching this now, if you were to kind of Google Munchkin hanging in The Wizard of Oz, you would probably come across a version that looks a lot more like that, but was never the version in question.
Because you've got these anoraks that have forking out for all these copies of, or anoraks that have actually got copies of this footage on their VHS tapes. Which is hilarious, because I suppose the more Anoraki people that are interviewed, the more it's likely to spread rumours. And I guess a lot of people would thrive on that. They would thrive on the fact that they started these rumours, or they helped escalate these rumours about what was meant to have happened. But I still find it completely compelling viewing, though, to see so many different viewpoints, because obviously this series features a lot of people that don't believe that's what happened, or a lot of these rumours about what was cursed about the film in the first place. Yeah, it's interesting to get that take on it. I mean, some of it I scoffed at, some of it I thought that could have actually happened. I mean, the burning stuff with Margaret Hamilton was quite shocking, really, for someone to go through all that. I mean, health and safety is just a completely different ballgame back then.
It was, and also another thing it featured I didn't know, which was that there was an actor that was originally playing the Tin Man who had a very bad reaction to the makeup they were using, which it transpired was believed to then have had aluminium kind of metal powder in it, and actually he'd breathed that in, it got into his lungs, and he was basically poisoned by the makeup and then had to leave and be recast. Whether it was from breathing in, or whether it was his skin suffocating, or if it was a reaction, etc., that haven't really been got to the bottom of. But again, that adds to that kind of like unsafe, untested set where things are going wrong. But then what the series does very well is it kind of contextualizes it all. And this was, this film was shot in 1938 and released in 1939. So they were using kind of innovative and groundbreaking technology at the time. So, they're trying to do things, and then, as you say, health and safety on it was, and also, they were really pushing the boundaries of what they could achieve. It was a massive production. So when there's lots of stories about it being a troubled production or a troubled shoot or different things, it's like, that's because it was really big, ambitious budget, and inevitably things are going to go wrong.
It's funny, isn't it? Because with a series like this, Cursed Films too, you would think it was all going to be horror, but it's not just horror films they talk about. It's other films. Obviously, The Wizard of Oz not being a horror film.
No, but interestingly, what all the three films that I saw in common, they have some kind of like otherworldly element, and I kind of think that subject matter that encourages people, that really draws people into a fantasy world, is then I think going to create more mystique about it anyway. At the time, it was made just on the evening, not the night before, but like as World War II was looming, and then it would have been released by the time it came out. So you've got this sense of foreboding and kind of like something not quite nice going on at the time. And also these fantastical elements. And of course, the other thing is, you know, if something's really beloved and becomes a cult status, people are going to care about these things, and people are going to research these things. There's going to be facts, and there's going to be fans, and there's going to be stories. And, you know, if you probably think about all the films that have ever been made and the scale of them and the budget, there's probably all sorts of on-set accidents and mishaps. For example, didn't Tom Cruise break his ankle making a Mission Impossible film?
Oh, yeah. When he was on one of the stunts, because he did a lot of the stunts, didn't he, himself?
Yeah. But people aren't saying, oh my God, that's a cursed film. It's not going to go down in you know.
Shit happens.
But also because nobody's that bothered. Like, it's kind of... So in a way, the fact that, you know, I mean, I chose 3 films in a series that I'd actually seen, so I could kind of get the context more. And the other 2 that I've not yet seen, I've not seen the films, and I might watch the films first.
That's an interesting point, because I picked... Rosemary's Baby and Wizard of Oz, which I've seen and love, and also Cannibal Holocaust, which I haven't seen, but I've heard all the negative stuff about. Obviously, it was video nasty at the time, and it was when it was made, it caused so much controversy because of, you know, animal deaths, you know, the animal exploitation, and the, you know, the rumours that human beings were genuinely killed when they were making this film. So it was almost like a snuff film. But I haven't seen that film. But watching this, you know, this episode in Cursed Films 2, it makes me not want to watch that film because it was just grisly.
Was that a sort of lower budget film anyway? Because I guess there's that sense of kind of like, you know, late 70s, early 80s kind of Italian horror kind of being churned out and kind of quite slapdash. So,
but I mean, the director seemed quite, I don't know, not brazen, but he didn't seem as bothered by... I suppose, you know, the rumours and everything, that it's just promotion for the film, isn't it? So he's going to kind of enjoy that. But there was one of the actresses in the film who has completely washed her hands of being in the film, just because of almost being tricked into what they had to do in the film, which was not really in the agreement or in the contract to begin with. I think they moved the goalposts when they were filming. Should we talk about Rosemary's Baby? Because this is the second episode. I love the film. I'm sure you love it as well. And
that's the thing, again, what the series do, and I'll talk about a bit about Stalker shortly, but I think what the series does really well is it kind of contextualises it, and that a lot of this kind of furore over something and kind of is to do with outside elements. So, you know, Rosemary's Baby turns out to be about Satan. The Sharon Tate murder, that was after this film, and this actor, she was someone who I think was friends with Sharon Tate, and so when that happened, she became very sort of paranoid, and again, it all kind of, you know, so it's not surprising that you know, that really not very long after this film about Satanists came out, that there was that horrific incident. I mean, you could say curse, you could just say really unlucky. Yeah,
exactly. It's what you make of it. With that title, isn't it, is how you analyse it, and a lot of people do analyse it, and like I say, it's very honest, because you got people that wouldn't necessarily believe, you know, the film is cursed. It's just either coincidence or it's just you know, a detail that people are overthinking.
And there are certain things about, you know, the building that was filmed, about someone dying there and different things, and someone lists this long list of this, I think it's called Benedict Canyon or something, or in LA, and that this person died here, then this actor had a heart attack there, then so-and-so was in a car crash, and so-and-so lived there, and then they died there and whatever. But then when you look at it, it's actually like a long stretch of road in the middle of Hollywood. So I actually Googled the place, and the famous people that lived there, there's like a list of about 50 of them. So it's kind of like, it's not necessarily that road is cursed or whatever, it's just that road is in the middle of Hollywood where lots of comings and goings happen, and
busy people, lots of coincidence, I guess. But it is kind of spooky how it was almost like that house and that house across the road, and then that one across the road, and then it was kind of like you could just pinpoint all the buildings where nasty stuff happened. But it did all happen on that road. But you're right. I mean, it's, you know, it's centre of attention, isn't it?
And also part of the lot of the studio being a former burial ground.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. There's going to be a lot of LA and a lot of other places that are reclaimed land, and it's going to involve burial grounds and whatever, and things being moved, and kind of like, and then of course, if you go further back, probably on to kind of like Native American sacred sites and all that kind of stuff. And there's one of the actresses who's actually plays a small part in the film, who they interview now, who completely went off the rails and, you know, ended up shooting her husband and going to prison and kind of whatever.
That's
and
right. She was so blasé about it being interviewed. It was so funny. Yeah. I mean, I laughed. So I was like, oh, I did this naughty thing. I shot my husband. I shouldn't have. He. But tell us about the other film, which is Stalker.
So Stalker is a Andrei Tarkovsky. I think, did he do the original Solaris? And he's like Russian director. This certainly tells a story of a very troubled film. It was made in the Soviet Union at the end of the 70s. There was one big thing about it, which was that apparently they shot for 6 weeks and then they didn't do any rushes, which is normally, you know, you'd be reviewing the footage every day. You know, the film gets sent off and people look at it, whatever. But for some reason it didn't, and then the film was really spoiled. Apparently the colours were all wrong, and they'd been using a new Kodak film, and it had kind of all. And apparently the cinematographer, they weren't really using him very much on set, so pretty much had 6 weeks worth of footage, spent the whole amount of budget, and then it was apparently pretty much unusable. But then some of the people say actually nobody has seen that footage, and that footage doesn't exist anymore. The negatives of it don't exist. And actually, was it that the director had a bit of a crisis of confidence and just used it as a way to kind of almost like rebirth the whole project? Interestingly, he got very unwell afterwards. He had a heart attack, and so it looked like it was in lots of trouble, and then they kind of remade it. It's quite a grim film, sort of set in this future where there's a place called the Zone, which is apparently where some incident has happened, maybe like a extraterrestrial thing, and that if you get to the centre of it, you find something that brings all your wishes true, but it's very hard to get to. So they have these people called stalkers who guide people in. It's almost been quite apocalyptic, the state the world's in now. And they ended up then going to film it in Estonia. It almost seemed very prescient to Chernobyl, because obviously a few years later, the Chernobyl incident happened in Ukraine, which kind of created this zone. And there's even now people who call themselves stalkers after that film, who take people on guided tours around the exclusion zone of, there's a certain part of Chernobyl you're still not supposed to go in there, kind of. So it's almost kind of fed into that. Watching the film, having known about Chernobyl happening afterwards, it's hard not to think about that. During that film, there's a lot of it where they're kind of like crawling through like low-level water and puddles and whatever. So a lot of it was filmed in this river in Estonia that it turned out at that time had lots of pollutants in it from like local industry. They'd reel off a list of people who all died of cancer within kind of like 5 to 10 years from it. And it seemed like quite an arduous thing to make as well. But then I think that all then adds to the mystique of the kind of film it is and the kind of cult status that it has. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of European art house cinema. Sorry.
But does that change your outlook on this episode of Cursed Films too, though? I mean, actually not loving the film, but were you interested in what they were talking about and analysing the detail of it?
I actually watched the film when I was studying a few years ago. It was on a watch list. Didn't really know much about it, and I wasn't really inclined to kind of find out more, really. And I kind of think a lot of these things, it just goes to show what an epic task filmmaking can be anyway.
Yeah.
You know, you're creating a world out of nothing. You're having to get a whole load of money and kind of bank it on predicting that this thing is going to work and that all the elements are there. And I think similar, harking back to The Wizard of Oz, I think just the scale of it and what they were trying to achieve at the time. Like, I mean, one of the things they were saying in that film, that in the one about The Wizard of Oz, was how to achieve this kind of technicolor, you know, that look it has, there was so much lighting. And that all the time there was someone constantly going around taking the temperature under the lights just to make sure they weren't going to just catch fire. And so you then got the cowardly lion in all his makeup and all these things, you know, under these very hot lights. So, you know, It's very difficult to do.
I thought it was a really fascinating series. I mean, we've only watched 3 episodes each. Are you likely to watch the rest of it? Knowing,
Definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
And I'd really like to check out season 1 as well, because I think that's more horror orientated than this series. But it can run and run, because I'm sure there are so many stories with other films that haven't been talked about.
The ghost in 3 Men and a Baby.
Yeah, you might be pushing it a bit there.
And the stormtrooper banging his head in Star Wars.
Oh yeah, oh god, there's so many, I'm sure. I mean, maybe someone can leave a comment. Maybe there's an episode of Cursed Films 2 or 3, even if they're going to do a 3rd series, that they should concentrate on. So yeah, which movie would you like to see featured? I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of it. It's on Shudder, so check it out if you subscribe to Shudder. I think they're doing some kind of trial for 7 days where you can check out all the other stuff that they're showing.
And it's really good. I mean, apart from the kind of like hook of exploring the kind of myths and the cursed element of these films, it's just really great insight into the making of the film. And they have really interesting people who've come from, related to people who are involved, people who were involved, fans. They have a amazing bit that's really beautiful about the ruby slippers, which are now in a museum, and kind of, and how people respond to that film. So, I think it's quite, as if you enjoy film, they're quite enjoyable to watch.
Absolutely. I was just going to say the same thing, because it's very varied and it's really detailed as well. It looks like they've put a lot of effort into each episode. There's a lot of talking heads, like you say, there's a lot of interviews, and also fans, and it's kind of different types of people as well. People that are involved in the films that don't necessarily have a positive story to tell about that film, but it's an experience. So I think it's quite varied. It's quite eclectic.
I also feel like I should say, in defence of the Munchkins, because I started off on that, the little people, the rumour about them being very debauched in a hotel, it kind of becomes quite clear. I think in the film, that in the TV show, that I think it was like 139 little people that were used as acts on set, and they were all in this hotel in Culver City. Some of the people say there were a handful of people who were partying and drunk and kind of whatever, maybe like 8 or 10 or something.
Yeah.
As in, I guess if you were to have any group of 139 people somewhere all together during a really tough filming schedule, so that myth that all the little people just going crazy is kind of just untrue. But Judy Garland perpetuated it herself. They show a clip of Judy Garland clearly looking very drunk on a chat show herself, saying, "Oh, they were all drunk." And actually, it hints at some of her. Well, it talks about some of her tragedy as well. I don't want to sort of preempt it, but there's a really moving sequence where Lorna Luft, who is Judy Garland's other daughter, that's not Liza, is being interviewed, and they talk about how they were drugging Judy Garland on set. They were giving her kind of pills to kind of pep her up, and it was, it's kind of like, vitamins or just like energy, whatever. But actually, it was kind of like, I don't know, antidepressants and all sorts of other things. So she was actually, at a young age, getting hooked on things to kind of get her through this shoot. Her participation in that was that she was just wanting to do the best job possible and please people. But she never really signed up for that, and I don't think she realised that. And actually, Lorna Luft draws a line from her own addiction and how she's got over that, and her mum's, and kind of actually said about how, that knowledge gives a certain amount of peace, that actually they never really had a chance, and it was not her mum's fault, and it wasn't her fault, that actually this channel of addiction within their family was started by Hollywood studios, who just wanted to get the film made and kind of had a very sort of cavalier attitude towards actors and keeping them safe.
It's funny, isn't it? Because a lot of people think, Wizard of Oz, it's obviously a popular kids movie as well as a popular film for adults, because a lot of people have grown up with it and have fond memories of watching it, but they don't know the dark side of what happened when they made the film. So I think that's quite interesting that they touch on stuff that maybe not a lot of people know about.
Yeah.
So it's called Cursed Films 2, available on Shudder. Paul, thank you as always. Always good to see you and chat about TV and movies. If you are new here, don't forget to subscribe and check out one of our other reviews, which is on the screen now. I think we've done lots of horror stuff recently, so it's likely to be one of those horror reviews on the screen right now. So just click on it and it'll take you there.